As many people have noticed, like literally thousands or more, whether or not something is acceptable on Facebook or YouTube all comes down to one word. It's okay to man bash. That is socially acceptable. It's not okay to women bash. That's not socially acceptable. Equality would mean that it was wrong either way. If I take a post that is bashing on men, it's usually something that both men and women do. Now, if I change the word from men into women, I will get a 30-day Facebook ban or a strike against me here on YouTube. It's popular. And as a result, the algorithms of Facebook and YouTube reflect it. Do they have actual human beings looking at this, or is it an algorithm deciding whether or not what you posted is wrong? Now, if that algorithm decides that it's okay if you say that about a man, but you say the same exact thing, literally changing only the word man into woman, then you have done some horrible sin and you should be punished. You should be banned. You should be marked as a horrible person. It's socially acceptable to blame all of your problems as a woman on a man. It is socially acceptable as a black person to blame all of your problems on a white person. And the algorithms and policies of these companies reflect it. YouTube is both a sexist and a racist company, not necessarily because the people who work there are sexist or racist, but because their policies reflect public opinion. And public opinion says that it's all the white man's fault. Anytime anybody tries to defend themselves against these false allegations or this cruelty that is a white male, they get bombarded with how it's their fault or how they are taking away from the real cause, how they are taking away from the real victims. Now, we got a lot of people saying, oh, well, we need to make it especially illegal to do these things to minorities. And then we get it shoved in our faces that slavery was legal 200 years ago. Slavery is still legal. Read the 13th Amendment, dumbass. Read the goddamn thing. Slavery is still legal. The 13th Amendment, which we try to pretend made slavery illegal, it doesn't make slavery illegal at all. Matter of fact, the 13th Amendment was used after the Civil War to re enslave millions of black Americans who used to be in slave housing, were not homeless. But when the 13th Amendment passed, there's this little clause in it that says that if somebody is found guilty of a crime, then they can be used as slaves. So the South made it illegal to be homeless. And then the North followed suit. And most other states followed suit, making every aspect of being homeless illegal. It's not just used against black people. I'm sorry if I look drained. I been crying a bit. Men aren't allowed to do that. Now I notice that when I fight for women's rights, that's socially acceptable. When I fight for women's rights, my channel analytics show that I get more subscribers, more subscribers, more subscribers, but I'm not after subscribers. Here's my channel analytics for the last 28 days. It said my views 3.3 thousand. That's 862 more than usual. Watch time in hours 235.7. That's 115.7 more than usual. But my subscribers are down. I've got 10 less subscribers, and it says 25 less than usual. Well, that's fine. See, just like in a lot of my videos, you notice people don't even watch the video, they just dislike it right from the get go. Within usually 30 to 45 seconds of starting a video, I've already got people clicking on it saying they don't like it. These are my predators. These are people who hate me, who want to do anything to perpetuate a narrative that is untrue. And they don't care. They don't care that I'm a human being. I don't even register as a human being to them. I am a mark. I am someone that it is socially acceptable for them to be assholes to. This is why people need to be allowed their rights. Here in America, I keep hearing about all these rights that I have, and all of those rights have been denied. My right to a fair trial, my right to show evidence, my right to face my accusers. The police helped my predators. Now, here I am after years and years of trying to get actual help, listening to people's pretty words and their bad assumptions and their ignorance, their bias, their sexism, and their racism. I get told that black people can't be racist, only white people can be racist, only men can be sexist. Are you out of your goddamn mind? Any fucking moron can look at any Facebook fucking timeline and realize that, yeah, that's a fucking bullshit goddamn narrative. Now, I lost 10 subscribers. I should feel bad about that, right? Like, I'm getting more subscribers leaving my channel than actually adding to it. That's fine. It's not a popularity contest for me. It's a matter of getting the truth out there and fighting till my last breath. When I fight for women's rights, it's okay. But if I fight for men's rights, I'm a horrible person. That's the narrative sold. That's sexist as all fuck. Now, we've got a whole bunch of people asking for rights that have already been passed. In the 1950s, we passed laws to make it especially illegal to do many of these things to specifically people of color. In the 1960s, because we didn't have laws that were passed to make sure that, well, those laws that were passed in the 50s were actually, God, what's the word I'm trying to figure out? Man, this is tough. I should know the word. There was no way to make sure that those laws were followed. Um, in the 1970s, we reintroduced those laws again. In the 1980s, we reintroduced them again. In the 1990s, we started getting body cameras. But instead of making it so that we could actually do something about it by forcing cops to wear body cameras and have them on, we didn't do that. We just passed the same racist special laws. So then in the 90s, we did the same thing. In the 2000s, we did the same thing. In the 2010s, we did the same thing. Now it's 2021, and we're trying to do the same thing we did all the way back in the 50s, but no way to enforce it. There's the word I was looking for. The way to enforce it is to force body cameras. That $3.2 million that was awarded to Seth Franco's family, or $3.4 million, that would have bought a lot of body cameras. Also, if those cops had been forced to wear body cameras at the time and have them on, there is a good possibility they wouldn't have committed the crimes that they committed. In my situation, they were allowed not only to not turn on their body cameras, but in the cases that they did have their body cameras on, they were allowed to destroy the evidence by illegally preventing me from turning them in. They illegally prevented me from turning them in by charging me with false crimes repeatedly over and over and over again. The result of that was me being forced to actually break the law to try to force the FBI to look into the situation. The FBI, rather than looking into the situation, helped my predators in the Longmont and Boulder Police Department get away with the crimes that they had committed. Officers across the board committed the same crimes against me that they did to Zaid Atkinson. They committed the same crimes against me that they committed against Seth Franco. They committed the same crimes against me that they committed against Michelle Rodriguez. All of these people got paid for being victimized by the Boulder Police Department. What I got was victimized even further. While these people got paid for what happened to them just once, I have had my income repeatedly stolen from me, and these things have happened to me over and over and over again. Mostly because my supposed friends are all a bunch of goddamn cowards and sexists. Like I said, it's magically okay to do it to a white guy. It's not okay to do it to a woman, but you can do it to a man. It's not okay to do it to a black person, but you can do it to a white person. That's not okay. I fight for equality. That means showing both sides. Something that the news does not do, something that the police do not do, something that the volunteer family does not do. I show both sides. Now, there's a saying I remember from when I was younger. There's always three sides to every story: his, hers, and the truth. Well, there was only one side that was allowed to be heard. Because of the way that I was targeted, I was illegally prevented from showing evidence. I was illegally prevented from defending myself against these monsters, and I have to deal with it to this day. And I get all these folks saying, well, I don't know what to do. There's nothing I can do. There's nothing I can do. There is something you can do. In my last video, there were people offering to do things for me. Now, it would be nice if I could just do those things and have it be done with. It'd be nice if there weren't a whole bunch of roadblocks in between me and my ability to do those things. It's almost 5 o'clock in the morning. Pumpkin Pantry is going to be open in about 6 minutes. I have to be afraid of going to Pumpkin Pantry because I might run into Robert Warnick there or Leslie Snell. And that's not okay. Leslie Snell should be in jail for the crimes that she committed, possibly prison. But instead, I have to be the one that worries that I'm going to get in trouble. Like if I walk into Pumpkin Pantry and Robert Warnick walks in right after me and he pretends like I'm stalking him like he did last time. My paperwork, he claimed that I was stalking him because I was already in Pumpkin Pantry when he went in. He had assaulted me. I tried to turn him in, and he continued to stalk me after assaulting me, and the Dual County Sheriff's Department did nothing. He got away with his crimes because Dual County Sheriff's Department covered for his crimes. And then many other law enforcement agencies around here helped Scott DaCosta to get away with doing his crimes. You know, everybody who is a subscriber on my channel could leave. I would still speak out. Nobody wanted to hear me in prison, but I still spoke out. I speak out every single day because it is right to do so. You guys tell me I need to just let it go. You know what? Did you tell Zaid Atkinson that he just needs to let it go? Did you tell the family of Seth Franco that they just need to let it go? Did you tell Michelle Rodriguez that she just needs to let it go? Meanwhile, Zaid Atkinson says that he's afraid to go out. He's afraid of the Boulder police. He is traumatized by his experience, and it only happened to him once. once, and he didn't get it nearly as bad as I did, but I'm not black. The only reason anyone gave a shit about that situation, there's two reasons. Number one, he was in a house. Number two, because he's black. Black Lives Matters got involved, and although Zaid Atkinson at the very beginning was admitting that this is the way homeless people are treated in the United States, BLM pushing their narrative was more important. Zaid Atkinson soon realized that he was more likely to win if he sold a false narrative, the same false narrative that BLM was selling. He was more likely to win doing that than by continuing to tell the truth. So Zaid Atkinson went from being a hero to me to being a straight up cowardly ass sellout. Samuel Leon Lawrence IV and Michelle Rodriguez are two of Officer Waylon Lolatai's victims in 2018. I was his first victim in 2018. Now, I've been in contact with Michelle Rodriguez as well as Samuel Leon Lawrence IV, and they did the same thing that many other people did. See, there's a guy named Darren O'Connor who pretends to be about homeless rights, but he's really not. He's about personal prestige. He doesn't give a shit about the homeless. Now, after Darren O'Connor had done some extremely shady shit, these people want to tell me, well, you need to get a hold of Darren O'Connor. And I let them know that Darren O'Connor had already informed me that he wasn't going to do a goddamn thing. He had his chance. I let him know about some of the other victims of Waylon Lolatai. And when Denver 7 spoke to him about it, he magically forgot that I had been assaulted by Waylon Lolatai. He said, oh, it's too complicated. No, it wasn't too complicated, Darren O'Connor. You're a fucking selfish piece of shit. You sold a false goddamn narrative because winning was more important than the truth. And you made it worse for all of us by doing that, Darren O'Connor. You are a coward of the highest degree. You are the worst kind of sellout. You are the most horrible of the horrible because you pretend to be the good guy and you're really not. You are extremely dishonest. You deserve whatever comes to you, Darren O'Connor. You actually did commit crimes against me, Darren, and as a lawyer, you should know those things, but that also explains why it is that you're hiding like a coward. Why you're not coming forward, why you're not telling the truth. It explains why you didn't tell Tony Kovaleski about me. Somehow magically it's okay for Waylon Lolatai to assault me, but it's only wrong if he does it to somebody who isn't me. It's okay for you to speak out about Waylon Lolatai doing these things to others, but magically you ignore it when it happens to me. I helped you out, Darren O'Connor, and you claimed you were going to help me, but you're a coward and a liar and a low-down, dirty POS. I could lose another 10 just today because I speak out for men's rights. Now, I haven't stopped speaking out for women's rights, but I'm also not going to stop speaking out about the women who make things worse for all of us, or the men who make it worse for all of us. How good-looking people feel like they are entitled. How rich people feel like they are entitled. And the rest of America goes along with it because all of America is a bunch of cowardly, low-down, dirty-ass cowards. Even the nerds, they want to be friends with the popular kids that are mean to them. They got a crush on that girl who is cruel to them. And they think, hey, if I'm on the side of those popular people, maybe they'll include me. That's right, they may. They probably won't. And if they do, it'll be as a joke. You don't really matter to them. If you take their side doing something that you know to be immoral because you think you might have a chance with that pretty girl, you're a fucking idiot. She's going to use you and she's going to throw you away. And men do this too. I remember in high school there was a guy who wanted me to break into a house and steal stuff for him. He wanted to try to impress upon me that if I went into this house and stole something that he wanted, that I could be one of the cool kids. Well, I wasn't a fucking idiot. I grew up in the goddamn system. I'm not going to go fucking breaking into somebody's house. You want to break into their house? That's on you. You go do it yourself. You do your own fucking dirty work. The Bollinger family didn't have to do their own dirty work. They had other people do it for them. Natalie Bollinger didn't do her own dirty work. She had other people do it for her, like Tim Beeson and Maddie Boa. And Maddie Boa had all of her dirty little meth customers doing her dirty work. And then Natalie's ex-stepmothers had people like Kara Johnson Miles do their dirty work. And somehow, magically, their hands are washed clean. They are absolved of their sins. This country is disgusting. You know what? Being muscle bound and able to beat somebody up doesn't mean that you're not a coward. Beating up on people who are littler than you makes you even more of a coward. Harassing, threatening, and trying to intimidate people who are littler than you makes you even more of a coward. Your muscles, your ability to beat somebody up doesn't make you a tough guy. Your ability to take a fucking beating and keep on going is what makes you a tough guy. You're a muscle bound fucking idiot. You know what? Come back when you've had your ass kicked. I might have some respect for you then. You want to tell me about all the people you beat up? I got zero respect for that. Most of the stories I tell about the fights that I've been in, don't get me wrong, I have won a lot of fights, a lot of them, but I've lost more than I won. And usually when I'm telling you all the story about me getting into a fight, well, I'm telling you about occasions where I was on the losing side, or occasions where I may have won, but it was a Pyrrhic victory. That means that it was so costly that it was basically a loss. I'm not going to stop speaking up for women's rights because the horrible things that are happening to women are also happening to men. And if I want those things to stop happening to men, well, how can I ask for that if I'm not willing to ask for it to stop happening to women? But then again, if I speak out about something happening to a woman, I get more subscribers. If I speak out about the exact same things happening to men, well, I get less subscribers. All of this goes to show you all of the bias that I speak about, but not just that. I have the words of professionals, of police officers, of therapists, saying the same things that I have been telling you since day one. And it's different when an officer says it. It's different when a therapist says it. Obviously, I was right, but it doesn't make any difference. Right and wrong. What matters is that I'm a male, and as a result, I am not allowed to have rights. It is assumed that I have, well, white privilege. And don't get me wrong, there is something to be said about white privilege. But at the same time, you know what? A lot of people say, oh, well, your white privilege is not having to fear that the police are going to kill you just for walking down the street. Well, if you're a homeless person, you do. If you're a homeless person, you have to worry over 250 times more than a black man does. If you're homeless, you really do need to worry. You don't get white privilege when you're homeless. You have less rights than a black man in a house. The only people who have less rights than a homeless person are homeless minorities. Get that through your head. If you want to tell me about how horrible it is that the cops did something to you at your house, I want you to pay attention to the fact that there are many, many Americans who don't have a house to protect them from these assholes. You want to talk about how the police are biased, but then when they do this to the homeless people, these very same officers that you were saying, oh, well, it's horrible that they're doing this to black people, you will make excuses why it's okay for them to do it to the homeless. You will make excuses why it's okay to do it to the disabled. When we have a situation where a black man is harmed because the cops assumed that he was homeless, you're going to play the fuck out of the fact that he's black and ignore the homeless issue, just like you did with Zaid Atkinson and Samuel Leon Lawrence IV. They were both assumed to be homeless. Both of them were victimized because they were assumed to be homeless. Of course, Zaid Atkinson had somebody inside of a house recording the situation and saying that Zaid lived there. Zaid did not get his ass whooped. Samuel Leon Lawrence IV, however, did not have someone there inside of a house pointing a camera out saying that he lived there. And Waylon Lolatai, who is the one who was carrying a shotgun in that video, was Zaid Atkinson. Well, he beat the shit out of Samuel Leon Lawrence IV, and it was magically okay. They made excuses why it's okay. The city council made excuses why it's okay. The Boulder Police Department made excuses why it's okay. Even the media made excuses why it's okay. I don't like Samuel Leon Lawrence IV. I don't. The way that he treated me, he wanted special treatment for his disabilities and special treatment because he was black. He was not willing to treat me that way. He wasn't willing to try to understand my disabilities. He wasn't willing to understand that just because I'm not black doesn't mean I didn't have to go through it. Now, I understand that these guys, Samuel Leon Lawrence IV in specific and Michelle Rodriguez in specific, both threw me away like trash for telling the truth about Darren O'Connor. But then again, Darren O'Connor, unlike when my situation happened and he did absolutely nothing but lie out his ass at me, he actually helped these people. But why did he help them? Because they're minorities. Those are the people that he chose to help. Only the ones who were minorities. He ignored the ones who were not minorities. And that right there is okay. I get told about, see, I have to deal with things today, things that are actually happening today that nobody is doing anything about. I get it thrown in my face by black people that slavery was legal 200 years ago. No, it's still legal. I have served my time, repeatedly served my time as a slave under the 13th Amendment. I get to hear from women about how women didn't used to have the right to vote. I hear this from women who weren't even alive back then. All right, you're throwing shit in my face, telling me not to live in the past, and you are living in the past. You have the right to vote now. Why are you still bitching about the fact that women didn't have the right to vote 100 years ago? Why are you still bitching about that? You have that right now. I'm speaking about rights that I don't have. Having people throw it in my face that it's magically okay to them that my rights don't exist now because of things that were not my fault, that happened before I was born, that were resolved before I was born. Do you women have the right to vote today? Then shut the fuck up about not having the right to vote. You have the right to vote. The rights that I'm speaking about, that I'm supposed to have, are more important than the right to vote. More important. Our ancestors had to take abuse from white people. Am I the white person who owned your granddaddy? Am I the white person who sold his 13-year-old daughter to a 40-year-old man No, I wasn't even alive in the 1890s. I definitely wasn't alive in 1863 when it was still legal to own another human being. I wasn't alive. I didn't own those people. And I don't owe them today for things that I didn't do. I don't owe you for something that happened to your grandfather or your great grandfather or your great 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 grandfather. If I do something wrong to you, that's different. If I enslaved you personally, then I'm in the wrong, but I didn't. Did I prevent you from going to the ballot boxes and voting? No, I spoke up about the fact that in many of these low income areas that are predominantly African American or Hispanic or Native American, that getting to the polling boxes, they make a giant pain in the ass. In some of these places, they set everything up for the polls, they set everything up for the vote, and then they just didn't open the doors. That's wrong. It is wrong to do that. I understand that there's a lot of stuff going on today that is still wrong. We were still having to fight battles that we thought that we had a victory in the 1860s, in the 1950s, in the 1960s, in the 1970s, in the 1980s, in the 1990s, in the 2000s, in the 2010s, and here we are again, passing again the same laws, and yet again, leaving no clause to enforce those laws. And we're making them special for certain people because of things that happened to, well, not to them in the past, but to their relatives long since passed. There's only so long that we can blame all white people for something that hasn't existed in the United States for nearly 200 years: slavery of people based on color. Now, just because we took out the clause about colored people doesn't mean that we took out the laws that allowed it. Like I said, the anti homeless laws were created specifically to target black people, but in a roundabout way because, well, now that black people were free, we couldn't make special laws just to make black people slaves. We have to make something that black people do, especially illegal: homelessness. Today, there are a lot more homeless people killed every year, more than double the amount of black people killed every year. More than double. There's 60 million black people and only around 500,000 homeless people, so that should really put it in perspective. That white privilege does not exist for the homeless. The idea that we will not be shot like a black person, you're absolutely right. We will not be shot like a black person. We will be shot in a much colder fashion. That officer will have a lot easier time pulling his trigger knowing that BLM doesn't give a fuck, knowing that these women's rights movements don't give a fuck, knowing that there is not going to be the backlash from murdering a homeless person that you're going to get from killing George Floyd. George Floyd was not straight up murdered. Now, he was killed. That officer deserves to be in prison for at least manslaughter. He was smiling about it while he was doing it. And I've had that happen where you can't breathe, where you're scared shitless. I mean, that's a scary way to go. It's scary when somebody is trying to choke you to death. I've been through it. It's scary when somebody's putting their knee on the back of your neck or they're squishing your chest down. When you've got a 400-pound guard in the Scottsbluff County Jail putting his knees on your back and squishing the air out of you, and you can barely eke out the words, "I can't breathe," and they say, "Oh, you can breathe. If you can say you can't breathe, you can breathe." But then we got people like Thomas Kelly beaten to death by half a dozen officers in California, beaten to death He wasn't armed. He wasn't fighting back. They murdered him and got away with it. Matter of fact, if you go to my Facebook profile and you look at my picture, my profile picture, that's a picture of Thomas Kelly. That's a picture of what they did to him. That's a picture of him with his face covered in blood and bruises and puffy all over the places with tubes going in and out of his body. He died. He was brutally beaten to death. Brutally beaten to death. But he was a white guy, so it's okay. He was called mentally ill, so it's okay. It's never okay. It's not okay to rape somebody just because they're mentally ill. Well, I'm going to end this video.